others, you know?
Right.
Fantasy's a powerful thing. It really is.
So working with all those artists and working with people, there's can be a lot of conflict or things that come up. So what are some things you've learned about to make things run smoothly in the studio?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that what my objective always has been, and even designing the studio has always been, this is a feel-good place. This is a place that people come to feel good, that they feel comfortable creating in. You know, you'll notice the lighting is very moody. It's not cafeteria-like. There's no fluorescent lights, you know.
That one studio I mentioned where my wife recorded with her sisters, there that fluorescent light right over where they were recording, and just hear all these
buzzes and hums, of course. Yeah, major problems with that because of electroharmonic distortions. Yeah, you know, we have technical issues we got to deal with, but more than that, the aesthetics. I can't tell you how many people have come in to just see the studio and said, this has got a good feel. That's important to me because any place you create in has got to be conducive to creation. And again, I think you and I were speaking on the side about recently there was a release of a Beatles film called, Get Back. And that's a perfect example. They were thrust into a situation in a very big motion picture recording room that was a cold warehouse and then told, create. And even talent of that magnitude weren't able to be at their best because the surroundings didn't make them feel real good, and then how that whole thing changed when they went to an area that made them feel good. That was a great movie to see that actually happen in real time. It was amazing within weeks or days, Yeah,
that's really interesting because you think about often aesthetics is kind of not really that important, or it's just, it's good to look at or whatever, but it doesn't have any real consequences in our real world, right? Yeah. But it actually does. It plays a very important part.
And don't get me wrong, I learned how to build a recording studio only through learning how to build a bad one. I was commissioned to help build a studio that came out horrible. The person who built it was a carpenter, so aesthetically it looked phenomenal. And it felt great to record in, but it didn't work technically. So there is that balance.
Right.
A lot of the technical stuff is behind the wallboard, is behind the paint job, is behind the ceiling.
And you've got wires running under the floor
here?
Oh,
there's truss and
behind the walls.
Just the walls themselves, are lined with, rebar that's tied in with copper for a Faraday shield, just to protect RF, especially nowadays. I wasn't thinking in 99 when I developed this room that cell phones are going to be in tremendous abundance, because that's frequency, you know. And thank God, because, when you walk into this room, you're going to see a drop in your cell phone signal big time because I'm trying to keep out those interferences that would disturb the recording. So there are technical considerations, but really a very important aspect, as important, would be the aesthetics like we were talking about.
Okay. Yeah. So the Faraday shield, there's a lot of stories and movies about EMPs leading to the end of the world, but you'll still be fine, be able to record
You'll
music.
be fine here. You may hear a couple of voices here and there, but no, it's that interference. Our arch enemy is outside frequency, and that's
I mean, when I'm recording at home, I'll be recording. I'm like, what's that buzzing sound? I'm like, oh, my cell phone's too close to my interface. So
it's called GSM interference. Even though it's at a different frequency range, there are byproducts in capturing that signal that spill in, harmonic distortions that spill into the range of audio. It's the reason why sampling is so high. Sampling is done at a much higher frequency than what we hear because of those spill down problems, because of those harmonic distortions that exist for the process to happen. So yeah, protecting your environment, not only acoustically, from a truck passing by, but things you can't see. Interference, electroharmonic interference, stuff like that, very, very important.
So definitely, and also, have a backup battery is really important too, especially.
Yeah, well, being in the lightning capital of the world, don't forget you've got equipment that is existing in what I call an Edisonian age, meaning Thomas Edison pretty much was the father of electric. Next to Tesla. Those aspects of development, were archaic because it's a different world in the early 1900s than it is now. Integrated circuit wasn't even born. Now to have a system that, if you vary by a fraction of a volt can determine its behavior and its life. It's the reason why you buy this TV set, you you honor it, you clean it, you unplug it. But what happens is, all of a sudden it dies on you. Well, because a certain amount of those jolts, of those voltage jolts, are going to wind up shortening the life of that piece of equipment. If you really condition your power feeding your equipment and you treat it right, I spoke to the developer of my console and I said, sir, when you designed a console, did you design it to turn off at what frequency? He says, I designed it to never turn off. And then I said, well, I live in the lightning capital of the world. He says, well, I would wait about 8 hours to turn it off then. So what kills a piece of equipment is turn on, turn off, is the surge in, surge out. That's the killer. Once it's up and running.
So that's the same with like your computer. If you're having a desktop computer, your laptop, you should try and keep those on. Putting
it to sleep is important. And then if you're, and also low voltage interference and destruction, your internet line or your Ethernet cord can create a lot more damage than can your AC cord.
Okay.
Very important. Low voltage electrostatic interference.
So if you're not using circuits, that, just leave it
unplug it.
Okay.
Yeah, unplug Ethernet connections for sure. That's very, very important for me.
Okay.
I've had too much experience.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Too much experience with burnout equipment, with equipment, $1,000 modules. I come in the next day lighting up like a Christmas tree. And then sending it out to, my cousin who's does hardware repairs for the state of California, and him saying, I don't know what happened to this thing. All I know is every component in the unit's burnt. He goes, use it as an anchor the next time you fish. And that happened to me a couple of times until I learned my lesson. I even use conditioners to try to condition out. Those spikes are so quick and powerful. Just unplug it. Just unplug it. So the second I'm done with that piece, I run to it and unplug it because it's $1,000, investment. Telephone based.
Hey, if you got value from this video, feel free to drop a like. If you're looking for a proven step-by-step process for consistently producing pro quality music from home, then just grab my free rapid song finishing checklist in the description below. Also, if you're just looking for more tips and tutorials on how to produce pro level music from home, then just check out my playlist or video on the screen right now. All right, have an awesome day and keep creating.